The Honourable Clayton Cosgrave.
Mr Speaker, like others, I stand to support this bill. I think we should be incredibly proud of New Zealand's wine industry. It lines up with many of the products and services that we export. I've spent quite a bit of time in the United States, sir, and the number of people who will talk about, when they know you're a Kiwi, New Zealand wines. I remember in Washington DC, last time I was over, I wandered into the Safeway, which is a few hundred yards from the embassy, and looked for the New Zealand wine. I think it might be a few hundred yards closer now. Tim Gross is there, but however. There were 3 Americans standing there looking for New Zealand wine, and when they heard the accent, not that I'm an expert, I know how to buy it, but I'm not an expert as others are across the house on it, they were keen to talk about New Zealand wine, how fantastic it is. And this is an important piece of legislation in an intellectual property sense, in a commercial sense, both protecting brand New Zealand and those brands within the wine sector, but also I think aiding and abetting the continued promotion of New Zealand wines. I want to commend the Minister. This is a substantial piece of legislation, very important. Better than his first effort, which was the Standards and Accreditation Bill, which I know will go down in history as a fantastic piece of legislation. I suspect, though, his colleagues and others will, and those watching around New Zealand, will somehow take greater cognizance of this piece of legislation than the Standards and Accreditation Bill. And it is interesting. I know we do have, sir, a number of connoisseurs in the House. I know by reputation that Tim Grosser will probably be his own geographical indicator, sir, in Washington DC by the end of his stewardship. A man who is well-oaked, shall we say, well-oaked, and has done everything he can throughout his career, both as a senior diplomat, a world-class trade negotiator, inventor of many things and many things yet to come, a splitter of the atom, and by the time he finishes, sir, as ambassador, he will have done probably what no other person can do as a Kiwi internationally in terms of promoting the New Zealand wine and possibly spirits industry, sir. I note that Maggie Barry is also world-renowned in respect of her appreciation of New Zealand wines. I'm told she likes a rough red with a touch of bitterness to it. Todd Barclay, I'm told also, sir, had a passion for gooseberry wine occasionally. Slightly green, sir, slightly green, and and yet to sort of mature up that point. And Judith Collins, sir. Judith Collins, I'm also told, was very, very fond in her younger days of that wonderful New Zealand wine, Cold Duck. So was Trevor Mallard, but I think that was in a different life, sir. So I know, or was it that sticky wine, Noble Rot? I'm not sure. But, sir, I know that all jocularity aside, and that proves I haven't imbibed, sir, because I would have slurred that particular complex word. In all seriousness, this is an important piece of legislation. There is a massive contribution made to New Zealand in terms of export dollars and reputation by the wine industry. I know Philip Gregan, I think has championed the wine industry for many, many years, has done a superb job. I remember some interactions with him when I was on the Primary Production Committee many, many years ago, and is really, along with others, and the previous speaker, has been at pains to champion the industry and grow it over the years. The wine industry has moved from the days when Grant Robertson was a great Mark Vu guy, I think back in his student days, or Spumante, and having a limited selection. When you'd go into a restaurant, it was sort of white or red, and if you're lucky, it was sort of medium or strong, if you will, in a cask or not. And that, or well, in Mr. Farfur's case, a bladder, depending on what polytech he went to, but has now moved into a world-class industry from Otago. Who would have thought? I lived in Perth for a number of years, and I have to say, way back then, you couldn't really beat a Margaret River Red. They were pretty good. I have to say, as I send the odd bottle over to friends who I worked with, even they would agree that an Otago Pinot is right up there, right up there. And I know Mr. Barclay's been proving that point for many months since he made it into Parliament. Equally, we're known for Sauv Blanc all around the world. And Cloudy Bay, of course, was, I suppose, I would argue was probably a flagship brand for that many, many years ago, and you know, blazed a trail for the wine industry throughout the world. I think there's more we can do, and perhaps more that trade and enterprise and other government agencies can do to assist the wine industry to grow, especially in the States and in other places. I was recently in Italy talking to a politician, and the first thing he said to me was, "Sauv Blanc, I love your wine." He had a few bob, this guy, and he used to import a few cases every year. He loved it so much, when he comes back to New Zealand, he enjoys it. So not only is it a great industry, not only is there a bit of fun and humour around it from time to time, even in this place, but I think it actually is a flagship industry for New Zealand. People who go to social functions at our missions, at our embassies, they're exposed to that. Our diplomatic folk do a lot to, in all seriousness, to promote the industry. And it is one of the things that we are known for. Little old New Zealand, yet again, 4.5 million people producing a world-class product. The only criticism of it, I think, is that we don't produce enough for the vast numbers of people in the world who've come in contact with it, enjoyed it, and would like to buy more of it. So I think this is important to protect those brands. I think it is important in terms of our trading position, and I commend all those in that business. It is a risky business. It's a business where you've got to put a lot of capital out. You've got to spend a lot of money, you've got to do things right, and you've got to hope like hell that you've got it right, and that the weather doesn't do you over. Speaking of Blue Duck,
That's a beer.
That the
This is not going to end well.
Extension. You know, I think it's a superb industry, but it is a risky industry. A lot of capital put up, a lot of risk. You have to know what you're doing. You can get it wrong. You can lose your shirt, and many people have over the years, sir. So I commend those people who are prepared to guts it up and to promote a world-class product and to risk their shirt to grow a business and employ people and provide a world-class flagship export product. And to those on the other side, last orders.